Hey everybody, this is Jake with TrendSpider to go over the weekend analysis on SPY, QQQ, and XBI and show you how we can use the TrendSpider charting platform in a realistic way when you're doing charting over the weekend or even intraday if you're day trading. So to start with, on SPY, we've got some interesting stuff going on here. We've got this trend line extending out that was really from all-time highs, and now we're kind of trading right at this level again, which is also at a confluence with the weekly 78.6% Fibonacci level. So we can see that we've tested this area once, twice, three times, and now we are testing it for a fourth. So notice here the increase in volume, but this candle kind of shows that buyers were pushing the price up towards the end of the day. So we do have the MACD cross on the bearish side of things on the daily. However, excuse me, this doesn't always mean that there's going to be a huge breakdown. Even though it looks like a massive tsunami about to crash, this can easily kind of do a false breakdown and then continue up. So another thing to kind of support that is the fact that we closed red here with the red volume bar, but then the percent range ticked up and the RSI ticked up as well. So if we can really break through this area, this could really bring in some new buyers, as this has been a crucial level to watch into really since the breakdown in October. So if this breaks out, we could possibly be testing some new highs since October or since the initial breakdown in early October. So definitely watching this area. On the weekly candle side of things, this is the first candle that has been red on the volume bar since we started 2019. So that is rather significant. This is kind of like an indecision doji, almost kind of like a hanging man, but not really. It's not necessarily perfect on the rules there. But regardless, it shows that there was some downside, but then buyers came back in and we closed near the high of the candle, but not exactly. We did close lower than what we opened at the beginning of the week, hence why it's red. Now, the thing that is interesting on this chart is the MACD fast is starting to break through the zero line here. So we recently had the breakout with the cross here, and then we continued up. And now what we're seeing is the percent range is overbought, but the RSI is not overbought yet. So notice how sometimes when the RSI and the percent range are both overbought here, and then we see the divergence, we can see that the price was hitting higher highs here, but then the RSI was actually hitting lower lows. That's generally the signal that's kind of like, okay, maybe there's a pullback coming. Now, on this case, it looks like, things are holding steady. This is obviously a massive move up, but in the past, if we look back, these massive moves up can just be followed by even bigger moves up sometimes. So not necessarily bearish here, not necessarily saying that we're going to rip to new all-time highs next week either, but this is something to keep in mind, that even though this is a big move up, that doesn't necessarily mean it always has to be followed by a big move down in the short term. So all in all, S&P is looking interesting, but the QQQ and XBI are actually showing more bullish signs here. So when we go to the Qs, we will see that we are kind of in the same pattern. We've got this kind of trend line from all-time highs moving down. We're right at this level again, except this time we're not coinciding with the 78.6% weekly fib level like we were on SPY. This is just kind of a technical area, and really right at the 200-day SMA. We are holding this area. Previously, this was resistance. Now it acted as support last week. And there was another uptick in volume here as well. We do have the MACD cross. This could easily be a fake out. And notice how that the RSI does have more room to move up before getting into these overbought levels. Now, on the weekly side of things, we also see kind of the same thing here with the percent range getting overbought, but the RSI is not overbought yet. So definitely something to keep in mind. Notice the divergence here as well with QQQ when we had the double top here, but then we had the negative divergence on the RSI and the percent range. Then we had the big move down on the MACD. So all in all, this is literally the 10th week in a row that's been green here. Now notice here the volume is actually starting to uptick. Obviously the big move up with decreasing volume was a little iffy there, but now we are starting to see buyers come in with an uptick in volume from last week. All in all, we are kind of trading in the middle of this megaphone resistance and support. So we'll just kind of have to see what the market does. You know, it's melted up constantly before, as everyone thinks there was a top in place. So just remember, the top isn't always in place until you have a stronger reversal. In this case, we've had 10 green weeks in a row, and in the past we have kind of had pullbacks after that. But notice this one: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, before we had a slight pullback and then a huge rip higher. So that's kind of what I mean by here. There's just not always a big reversal after a big move up. There can be a little bit of consolidation before the next rip up. Now, on XBI, which is probably the most speculative ETF on this video, we'll see that we just absolutely ripped on Friday with XBI. So all the two other ETFs were kind of flat. This one made new highs from this move up and is trying to approach the 78.6% fib level on the weekly candle. Now, this is the daily candle price action, but this is the weekly fib overlay that we would see on the weekly chart. Now, a cool thing is, on the weekly candle on XBI, we clearly have buyers in control with a close near the high of the week. We've got an uptick in volume. We have not broke through the zero line here, but notice how there's tons of room to move up on the RSI and the weekly chart, and the percent range is already in the overbought area, which can sometimes signal more room up. So for example here, notice how the percent range was overbought, but then we continued to move up because the RSI was not overbought yet. So something to keep in mind. We could even go as far as saying, let's create an alert at this resistance area if the price continues to move up. We can change the sensitivity here. We can change it to very sensitive or not sensitive at all. And you'll see where the alert will fire anywhere within this price range of the trend line. So if you want this to be triggered on the 5-minute candle rather than waiting for the daily candle to close, you can choose the 5-minute time frame. You can change this to, let's say, wedge resistance. And then we'll just do this for 7 days or triggered twice. Create the alert, and now we'll be alerted anytime the price action gets anywhere within this purple area. So all in all, the MACD is looking very different than the other two ETFs. There's a nice move up, and there's more room to move up on the daily RSI as well. The more bearish people are about a possible reversal, the more I'm thinking there may be a melt up, just because, you know, if there's too many people still on the bearish side of the market, it's going to be hard for that to move down. Learned that from one of my mentors growing up, and it has really been very true, especially as we've melted up here. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is there are gaps below, so eventually, you know, these gaps will probably want to fill. But for now, we have a nice bounce off the SMA 200 here, and possibly a nice launch pad for higher highs going into next week. As always, these are not recommendations or advice. This is simply just showing you guys how the charting platform works, especially our multi-time frame analysis, where you can overlay these levels on a single chart. So for example here, we've got the daily price action with the weekly overlay, and so when I turn Fibs W off, the Fibonacci levels are going to go away. When I turn that back on, they're going to come back on, and we can see how the price action is kind of interacting with those areas. Thank you so much for listening to this video. We hope you found it helpful, and if you find anything on the platform that you have questions on or anything like that, please feel free to reach out, and we will definitely help you out however we can. Have a great weekend, and thank you so much for listening in, and we will have another update next weekend.